If you're wondering how you can create interesting textures in your watercolor paintings, I'm going to show you how to do that with this sloth painting today. I'm using my Winsor & Newton Cotman watercolor set, which comes with a water brush. I have a couple of jars of clean water and some plastic wrap for the texture, and I'm just using some 1/4-inch painter's tape all the way around my 7x10-inch Arches watercolor paper, and this will help me create clean edges. And I just sketch on the sloth first, just using a mechanical pencil. It doesn't have to be perfect, just sketch on enough information so that you can start painting. Once you're happy with your sketch, you can start painting. I like to spray my paints to activate them, and then I'm using my water brush to wet the paper all over the background. You just squeeze the water out of the reservoir in the water brush, and to make it go faster, you can even spray the paper, or you can dip your water brush directly in your water jar, and that helps it go quickly. For this part of the painting, you have to work fast. So I'm grabbing all of my jungle colors from my pan set. I have 2 different greens, 2 different blues, and some yellow, and I'm just painting it in really quickly in the background. I want it to be really juicy and wet and colorful for the textures to look really good once we add the plastic wrap. So I'm just avoiding a couple areas that I think might be white trees in the background, but for the most part just blotting on really quickly and messily my jungle colors. I'm even introducing a little bit of purple. Next, I'm taking my plastic wrap and just pushing it onto the paper and covering all the areas that are covered in wet paint. I let that dry for about 30 minutes, and then when I remove the plastic wrap, you can see some really interesting textures have formed. So this is going to be the foundation for my painting. If you want, you can add some more color to make your background shapes a little more pleasing. And so I'm adding some more greens and darkening up some of those shapes and making them a little more defined. The areas between the legs of the sloth need to go a little bit darker, so I'm adding some more green here. I'm using lamp black and a little bit of Payne's gray to paint the dark shadow shape on the tree branch. I think adding a really dark shadow shape gives the painting so much contrast and makes it much more realistic. Next, for the sloth, I'm just squeezing out some more water and painting the inside of the sloth with clean water first. Then I'm mixing up some dark brown using burnt sienna and ultramarine, and I'm making this nice deep brown for the base layer on the sloth. I'm just squeezing it onto the wet paper and letting it blend and bloom. Beneath the sloth's head is a little darker, so I'm using some lamp black there to make it extra dark, and some more pure burnt sienna for more rich hints inside of the fur. Overall, I'm following my reference photo for shadow shapes, but I'm also not being super picky about the colors. I want it to look really whimsical and illustrative. I'm introducing little hints of ultramarine for some more interesting pops of color within the fur. I'm adding some of that to the underside, to the legs, and beneath the head, and then just adding some more brown to darken up in areas that need to go darker. This is really just the base layer. Once I'm happy with all of my shadow shapes, basic colors, and values, I can start to add some more colors to the background and blend it in, and then I can do details like the eyes. I'm using a really small round brush for the eyes, and I'm making them really happy, and of course the sloth has these black stripes along the sides, so I'm carefully painting those on. You'll want to make sure that when you add little details like fine fur texture, that your painting is completely dry so that it doesn't completely blend out into the wet background. So this is what you would call the wet on dry technique, and I'm just adding these details to the head, and I think it's really starting to look like a sloth. That smiley little mouth, I'm just using black and a little bit of burnt sienna and some ultramarine to make brown. And in the nose area, it's kind of a watered down ultramarine mixed with black to create this nice gray. I'm using lamp black for the toes. And now the body is mostly dry, so I can start to add fine fur detail. A sloth's fur is actually fairly coarse and long, so I'm not too concerned about the fur looking diffused or blending into the base layer because I want it to look fairly separated and piecey, long and shaggy. This part of the painting probably took the longest because I was really taking my time and making sure I had a good amount of paint on my brush and was just using very small, quick brush strokes for these fur details on the sloth. Don't cover the entire sloth with fur like this, otherwise he'll look a little bit overdone. You can just add it in details like the underside and the shadows and key areas where you see the fur just really changing directions in its growth and where you think it'll look the most interesting. Now that the sloth is done, I can really touch up the background with some more contrasty colors. I'm adding some black in the corners and between the trees, and I'm just using my water brush to make it look really loose and watered down. You can add more vibrant colors wherever you like. The background is where you can really just have fun and experiment. I don't use my Chinese white very often, but I thought it might be fun to add some more opaque hints of perhaps suggesting light coming through the jungle trees. And then for the whimsical effect at the end, I'm taking two brushes, one with paint on it, and I'm tapping it and adding the spatter effect. I'm using my alizarin crimson and my lemon yellow for the spatter effect. And you can see in this painting we've got such a great variety of textures. We've got the plastic wrap texture, the texture in the fur, and the spatter detail. And there is our finished sloth painting. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you'd like to see more tutorials about animal paintings, check out these videos, and I'll see you in the next one.